Imagine growing up in a house like this, a place where every room whispers of secrets best left buried, where the laughter of your youth echoes strangely in the empty halls, where the stairs you climbed so confidently now loom like a specter of your past self. For the protagonist of tonight's tale, this house was more than just bricks and wood. It was a living memory, a silent observer of her life. And the day she returned, she brought with her a darkness that the house seemed to have been waiting for. The city was a blur of noise and faces as she drove, each mile taking her further from the life she knew. But the further she went, the quieter it got, not just in the car, but in her head. The silence was deafening, filled with the ghosts of unspoken words and the weight of choices made. When she finally saw the house, it was like stepping into a half-forgotten dream. Time seemed to have stopped here, leaving her suspended between the girl she once was and the woman she had become. She walked through the front door as if it were a threshold between worlds. Behind her, the door closed with a finality that echoed in the sudden stillness. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of ages past. Each room was a faded photograph, each shadow a half-remembered dream. As she moved through the house, it was as if the very walls were reaching out, trying to hold on to something that had slipped through their grasp. But she wasn't here to stay. She was just passing through, a fleeting visitor in her own past. Or so she told herself, because the longer she stayed, the more the house seemed to seep into her bones, the more its whispers became her thoughts. She found herself sitting at the old dining table, tracing the patterns in its surface as if searching for answers. Outside, the wind picked up, prattling the windows like a restless spirit trying to break free. The house groaned, settling into the night, and she felt a presence settle beside her. It wasn't a ghost, not something she could see or touch. It was a feeling, a knowing that she was being watched, studied. She could feel eyes on her, not with malice, but with a chilling curiosity, as if some unseen observer was dissecting her soul. Panic started to rise, clawing at her throat, but she pushed it down, determined not to let this house, this memory, break her. She needed to leave, to get back to the road, to the life that awaited her. But as she rose to go, she felt the floorboard under her feet give way slightly. The house seemed to sag, to slump in on itself, as if burdened by some unseen weight. And in that moment, she understood. This house wasn't just a repository of memories. It was a living entity, feeding on the emotions it held dear. It had welcomed her, embraced her, because it knew her best. And now it was offering her a choice. Stay and become part of this macabre tableau forever, or leave and carry the weight of these memories with her until the end of time. What would you do? Would you stay in the house and embrace the darkness, or run away and carry the burden with you? Let me know in the comments below. When the sun finally peeked over the horizon, casting the first tentative rays of light into the dusty rooms, she was gone. The house stood silent once more, its secrets safe within its crumbling walls. But somewhere out on the road, the woman she had been started to awaken. In the depths of her eyes, a new fire burned, a determination to outrun the darkness, to face the horrors that awaited her. She knew now that the house hadn't just been a stop on her journey. It had been a battleground of her soul, and she had won. But at what cost? The scars of that night, of that choice, would remain with her always. A constant reminder that some doors are best left unopened, some paths untrodden. On the fifth night, the nightmare became real. The room twisted, walls buckled like a funhouse mirror. The closet door swung open, revealing not clothes or boxes, but a gaping black hole that sucked at the light. Then, from the corner, something solidified, taking shape from the shadows. It wasn't a creature, not a monster, but a person twisted into something monstrous. Their eyes, vacant pools, reflecting the flickering light. Their mouth hung open in a silent scream, teeth bared and dripping. But it wasn't their face that was the worst part. It was what dripped from it. Blood, thick, viscous, splattering across the floor, making a soft, sickening thud as it hit the ground. Then the thing shambled forward, or what was left of it. Limbs twisted at unnatural angles, moving with a jerky grace. It reached out, not with a hand, but with a stump where a hand should be. Fingers ending in hooks instead of knuckles, dragging themselves closer. You wanted to turn away, to block out the sight, but something held you there, frozen in place. Maybe it was the blood dripping from its chin onto its chest, making a dark red stain on its shirt. Or maybe it was the way it tilted its head, trying to get a better look at you, to study the fear blooming on your face. And then it did the worst thing of all. It smiled, revealing a mouthful of needle-like teeth. It wasn't a welcoming smile or a friendly one. It was a predator baring its fangs. It wanted you to know that it was hunting, that you were the prey. And in that moment, you understood. This house wasn't just haunted. It was alive. It fed on fear, on despair, on the darkness in every person's heart. And now it had found you. It was ready to devour you whole. But how do you fight something that knows you better than you know yourself? Something that can wear your fears like a cloak and use your loved ones against you. There were no holy symbols in this place, no crucifixes, only the relics of a life once lived, twisted and corrupted into something sinister. How do you escape a nightmare when the walls are closing in and the only way out is through the darkness itself? Because in Evil Dead Rise, the line between good and evil isn't just blurred, it's non-existent. Once you step inside, you're playing a game with the devil himself, and the stakes are higher than you could ever imagine. You are the prize. As the final night descends, the rules change. It doesn't care about your hopes or your dreams. It feeds off your deepest fears, turning them into reality. So, as the clock ticks, you must confront not just the evil that's risen, but the darkness within. You have to face the monster you might become. The greatest evil in this house might not be the thing in front of you, but the thing you'll become if you lose. It's a terrifying thought, but it's also the truth. If you give into the darkness, if you let fear consume you, then you've lost. You've given up the most important thing, your soul. The house is counting on it. The evil that's risen thrives on it. But you have a choice. Will you rise above or fall beneath? The decision's yours. But remember, in this house, the darkness always wins in the end. One way or another. Smell of rot filled the room, sharp and choking. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, like veins under skin. The thing in the doorway didn't move closer, but somehow you knew it didn't need to. The house itself was alive, and it was breathing with it. This was no longer just whispers, no longer shadows at the edge of sight. This was the encounter, the moment when the horror stepped fully into the room and made itself known. And once you saw it, there was no way to unsee it. In Evil Dead Rise, the true terror isn't just the monster. It's watching the people around you slowly lose themselves. When fear takes root, it doesn't just haunt the body, it poisons the mind. After the encounter, nothing felt the same. Every corner of the house seemed alive, shifting when you weren't looking. The floors groaned with footsteps that didn't belong to you. The mirrors no longer reflected you alone. Sometimes, for the briefest second, there was another face beside yours, grinning when you weren't. Sleep became impossible. Every time you closed your eyes, the voices returned, soft and patient. They no longer whispered warnings. Now they told you stories. Stories of things buried beneath the floorboards. Stories of screams that had once filled these same rooms. Stories of how the house had been waiting for you. By the sixth night, the lines between dream and reality had blurred. You woke to the sound of laughter, high-pitched and childlike, echoing from the basement. But the house had no basement. The laughter grew louder until it was all around you, vibrating through the walls, rattling the windows. When it finally stopped, the silence was so deep it hurt your ears. Food tasted wrong. Water turned bitter. Even the air seemed heavy with something unseen, something crawling into your lungs. Your own reflection began to shift. First subtle, an extra shadow over your shoulder, eyes that lingered a second too long. Then worse, your reflection smiling when you weren't, lips mouthing words you couldn't hear. And the house, oh, the house was changing too. The wallpaper bubbled like flesh, veins spreading under the paint. The doors no longer led where they should. One night, the kitchen door opened into a hallway that had never existed, stretching far too long into darkness. You tried to leave, but every attempt led you back inside. No matter how many doors you opened, no matter how many steps you took, the house folded in on itself, swallowing you whole. The world outside was gone, replaced by walls that whispered and shadows that laughed. The unraveling had begun, and once the house had its grip on your mind, escape was no longer about finding a way out. Escape was about holding onto who you were before the house took that too. In Evil Dead Rise, the evil doesn't stop at fear. It consumes. It claws its way under the skin, rips through walls, and leaves nothing untouched. When the climax comes, there's no running, only surviving if you can. On the seventh night, the house came alive. The walls shuddered like they were breathing. Paint peeled in strips that writhed like open wounds. The floorboards pulsed under your feet. sticky and warm, as though you were standing on veins instead of wood. Every door slammed shut at once, trapping you in the center of the living nightmare. Now get out while you can. This is your chance. Make it count, because in a few short hours, the sun will rise again. The dead will stir, and the nightmare will come for you all over again. Evil Dead Rise will haunt you long after the credits roll. There's a scene early on in the film that really embodies this idea of evil that clings to you. Our protagonist is being chased by these grotesque creatures called the Deadites through the dilapidated halls of a building that they call the Highland Riviera. As she's running, she takes cover behind a bathtub, and as the camera pans up, we see that she's not alone. There's already a creature hiding with her in the tub, and it lets out a hiss as it sees her. This is significant because it shows that even in places of safety, this evil can find you. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're hiding in a bathroom, under a bed, or even in the shower. This evil is relentless, and it will stop at nothing to get you. The thing about this film is that it doesn't rely on jump scares or cheap thrills. Instead, it keeps you on edge with an unsettling sense of dread. You feel the tension build with every creaking step, every whisper, every shadow that flickers in your peripheral vision. And when the jump scares do happen, they land with far more impact because you've been primed for them. The film cleverly uses sound to amplify the scares. For example, there's this one scene where our protagonist is trying to escape the building, but she keeps hearing these strange, distorted sounds following her. But first, you think it's just part of the building, some creaky pipes or faulty wiring. But then you realize those sounds are coming from inside her head. The evil is playing with her, taunting her, and it knows exactly how to get under her skin. When the violence erupts, it does so with brutal efficiency. There's a scene near the end of the film that involves a possessed character using a chainsaw. And let S just say it. S. One of the most intense and gruesome sequences I've seen in quite some time. But here's the thing. The gore isn't gratuitous. It serves a purpose. It reflects the deteriorating mental state of the characters and the increasing body count. By the time the chainsaw comes out, you've been emotionally invested in these characters, and the film has done a great job of making you care about them. So when the evil claims another victim, you feel it. What makes Evil Dead Rise truly terrifying is how deeply personal the evil becomes. It preys on the fears of its victims, using their own demons against them. In a way, the film is less about the external threat and more about the internal struggle. It's about how this evil acts like a parasite, feeding off your anxieties, your regrets, your darkest impulses. And the scariest part is that it can use these things against you, twist them into weapons, and turn them back on you. That S.Y. The film's climax is unto the moment when the main character confronts the embodiment of this evil. Sure, that's intense, but the real horror comes before that. It's when you realize that the evil has already infected you, that it's become part of you. That when the film stops being about an external threat and becomes a nightmare that only exists within. Evil Dead Rise is a masterclass in creating an atmosphere of dread and suspense. But it's also a film that will stick with you long after you've watched it. It raises questions about the nature of good and evil, about the darkness that exists within us all. And it does so without relying on cheap tricks or gimmicks. If you're looking for a film that will truly test your limits, that will leave you questioning what you just saw, then look no further. Evil Dead Rise is a must-watch. When you finally stepped outside, the world looked normal. Cars passed on the street. Birds sang from the trees. Neighbors smiled and waved, unaware of what was clinging to you. To them, you looked fine, but you knew the truth. The shadow followed. It lingered at the edge of your sight, always just out of focus. In reflections, in windows, in the shimmer of glass, it watched. The house wasn't just behind you, anymore it was inside you, and every step you took carried it farther into the world. That's the twist. The haunting doesn't end when you leave the house. The house leaves with you, and it waits patiently for the moment it can open its doors again. So tonight, when you turn off the lights, when you glance into the mirror, when you hear that faint whisper calling your name, ask yourself one thing. Did you really leave it behind, or did you bring it home? Evil Dead Rise ends with a reminder that evil is never truly gone. It just waits for the next soul to open the wrong door. And that's the terrifying part. Once you've seen it, it never stops looking back at you. And so our story ends, or does it? The house remains silent and waiting, and those who survive it carry its curse forever. Maybe you believe it's just a story, just words whispered through a screen. But remember this: every nightmare has a beginning, and sometimes it begins with listening. Think about it. How many times have you heard a strange sound in the middle of the night and told yourself it was nothing? How many times have you felt like someone was standing just behind you, but when you turned, no one was there? These aren't accidents. They're reminders. Gentle taps on the glass between their world and ours. And if Evil Dead Rise has taught us anything, it's that once you let that glass crack, the darkness doesn't stop until it's through. So the next time you hear that faint whisper in your room, the next time your reflection smiles when you don't, the next time your house creaks like it's breathing, don't ignore it. Because what if it's not the house making those sounds? What if it's something already inside, waiting for you to notice? The most terrifying monsters are the ones that linger just beyond our sight. The ones we convince ourselves don't exist, because if they do, then we have to face the fact that they might be closer than we think. After watching Evil Dead Rise, how many times have you checked the locks on your doors? How many times have you glanced over your shoulder at the dark corner of your room? How many times have you woken up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced you were not alone? The brilliance of Evil Dead Rise is that it preys on these primal fears, the things that go bump in the night, the whispers at the edge of our hearing. It forces us to confront the darkness not only within the characters, but within ourselves, the darkness that lies dormant, waiting for the right moment to strike. And let's face it, we all have that darkness inside of us. repay the evil that resides in our deepest fears, our darkest secrets. It's what makes us question the silence in the middle of the night, what makes us jump at our own shadow. And when we let that darkness consume us, when we give in to our darkest desires, that's when the real horror begins. It's easy to dismiss the signs, to convince ourselves that everything we hear or see is just a trick of the light, just a branch scraping against the window, just a mouse scurrying in the walls. But what if there is something out there? What if there are things that exist just beyond our perception, waiting to exploit our weaknesses, our fears, our darkest secrets? So the next time you watch Evil Dead Rise, I want you to pay attention to the little things. The things that make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The things that you try to convince yourself are nothing. Because maybe they are something. Maybe they're trying to tell us that we are not alone. Maybe they're trying to warn us that the darkness is coming. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, subscribe and join the movement. Thank you for watching. Now go check out this video, which is also great.